Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another installment of The Crush. That's my, Sunday voice. I'm trying to get other jobs out of doing the show. So hopefully, we'll talk after this. But anyway, everyone, welcome to another installment of the show. In case you're tuning in for the first time, this show covers all things innovation, creativity, ideas, smart people doing smart things. And I want to say hello to Jodi Goldenstein. Hello.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. I don't have nearly as cool a voice as you do.
It sounds pretty good so far. I think you're doing good. You want to try Sunday?
No, I don't think so.
No,
I would not live up to you.
First rule of improv is to say yes.
That's why I don't do improv.
Have you ever seen the movie Baby Boy?
No. Should I?
Tyrese plays a character named Jodi.
Oh, okay.
Very 90s LA hood movie. It's a long story.
All right, I'll add it to my list.
There was no promotional value in that whatsoever. I guess for starters, give us the 101 on who Jodi is. What are you up to? What do you love?
Okay, depends on how far back you want to go. Way back, grew up in a very small ski town in Vermont. Parents were entrepreneurs as they owned a hotel and restaurant, so they were the consummate entrepreneurs. I went running.
Like the original Airbnb.
Exactly. I kind of ran the other direction because I saw how hard they worked, and they wanted me to take over the family business, and no such luck. But I did learn significant work ethic and always worked from a very young age. In any event, started my career at General Electric, went into venture capital after that, went to business school in the mid-90s, and upon graduation, there was this thing called the internet that was just percolating and starting to take shape. And I got super excited about that and decided to kind of go against convention and didn't take the investment banking or consulting job and joined a startup right out of business school when it was not cool to be an entrepreneur. And spent the last 15 years in about a half a dozen startups. First internet, then moved over to mobile when the internet got too mature and wasn't the Wild West like it was at the beginning, and mobile certainly was. And for the past 5 years, I've been at the Harvard Innovation Lab.
This is quite the career path. Will there be another internet? This is not a real question, but I'm just you made me think of a lot of people kind of their career path took off with the introduction of that, and a lot of industries, a lot of the world changed. Do you see something that's on the horizon that will make as deep an impact? Yeah,
no, it is a real question. And, it's something that, I wish I had more time to think about. But, the internet was such a unique time in history and transformed so much of the way we live and work and play and everything. And I do think I'm kind of super excited about the coming of virtual and augmented reality as the next processing platform that's going to transform the way we do everything. And I kind of think the time is now. So I'm kind of excited about that. So
there you go.
I don't know.
Well, you're virtually here, so that's also good. So, tell us a little bit more about the Harvard Innovation Lab. What goes on there? It feels top secret when you say it, but it's also there's some amazing stuff that happens there.
Oh, no, absolutely. Lots and lots of innovation, hopefully. So we started 5 years ago, as I mentioned. We were a university-wide experiment to support innovation and entrepreneurship across all Harvard schools. And I make that distinction because many of you who know Harvard understand that it's a very decentralized place. And to bring all 12 schools together under one roof around innovation and entrepreneurship was pretty novel at the time. And so what we do is support budding innovators and entrepreneurs in every way we can. I like to give them access to resources and people that will increase their likelihood of success. We talk about lowering the friction costs. So they can get further faster and oftentimes fail faster and move on to the next thing. But, the one thing that's really unique and interesting about us is that we are stage agnostic, we're industry agnostic, as I mentioned, school agnostic. So we support all stages of development, whether you want to be an innovator within the context of a larger corporation or you start a company 5-10 years out. That's of no consequence to us. We really just want to create the next generation of innovators in everything that we do.
What's a friction cost?
It's interesting because I've been a struggling entrepreneur for many, many years, and creating a community of like-minded entrepreneurs, giving them access to the people, the contributors to the community, whether it be advisors, mentors, industry experts, investors, lawyers, et cetera. When you're a struggling entrepreneur, you can't get meetings with these people. So creating a community by which you can have access to all of that ecosystem that enables you to build your network, build community, learn from each other, in my mind, will increase your likelihood of success.
I want to apply now just so I can get in the program. I want to apply to Harvard.
I know, me too. I kind of want to do over because it wasn't nearly as cool when I was there.
Well, that's a great. I mean, even that is a great thing. I think this idea of Harvard having an innovation lab and other schools having similar programs. What is distinctive about the Harvard name, as whether it's a brand or the standard, or is there one? Like how does that live out?
I think it's less about the brand and more about the quality of the students and the diversity of students. So we are so fortunate to be attracting the best of the best from all over the world, and they come with a diversity of skills and experiences and backgrounds. And so it's the perfect melting pot to create big, impactful, innovative ideas. So again, a lot of what we do is trying to bring together all of these diverse people in a cross-disciplinary way. And our hypothesis is that if you do that, great ideas will be born. Things that otherwise would not have happened if you hadn't come at it from very differing viewpoints. So, you can get a chemistry student, a business student, a law student, and a Kennedy School student together and creating really interesting, impactful ideas that alone they might not have been able to come up with.
That's amazing. And how do you go about facilitating those, I call it accelerated serendipity, right? I actually stole that from an event recently. I was like, I actually wrote it in my notebook. I was like, accelerated serendipity. That's awesome. Shout out to Pete Strom. But how do you guys go about on a daily basis? Are the teams kind of handpicked, or you kind of put them in a room, you're like, count off?
Yeah. It's interesting. I like accelerated what did you call it? Accelerated serendipity. And we call it structured spontaneity or structured serendipity. So it's quite similar. I think in order to be authentic, you can't matchmake. You can't kind of pick someone from a school and pick another person and say, hey, you guys get together and create a company, because I really, truly believe true innovation and entrepreneurship has to come from a personal passion and pain point. So what we do on a day-to-day basis is try to create that structured spontaneity or serendipity where these collisions can occur. And some of it is really subtle. We just did a kind of a remodel of the space. And what I tried to do was create more opportunities for those collisions to occur, whether it be in the kitchen area or in more informal seating so people can happen upon each other. So sometimes it's subtle. Other things we do, a lot of our programming, we'll do 2, 3, 4 workshops a week, have large school-wide events, and a lot of the curation of those events is around helping people find each other, whether it's a color-coded name tag or, industry vertical types of programming. So much of what we do is try to make those connections happen in an organic way.
No, that's great. There was a guy who's on the show named Andy Walsh who runs the Red Bull Human Performance Program, and his whole goal is to kind of strip people from their convention, and then they grow. So one of the things he did is he had a mixer where you had to wear, it was like a masquerade. You had to wear a mask, and you no name tag, and you couldn't talk about where you were from or what you did. And it was interesting, like the types of connections that were made. And I would imagine there's something similar that happens, with in your program where not only are people just getting the work done, but they're building like lifelong relationships.
Absolutely. And so much of it is that. And what we find is that people come together not necessarily around a shared industry expertise or interest, but more about shared personal interests and backgrounds. And oftentimes when you can bring people together on those fronts and they make those connections, then great things can come out of that. So yeah, I totally agree.
You mentioned that the program is sort of industry and vertical agnostic, like come with an idea and we're going to help you. Right?
Or you don't even have to have an idea.
Oh, okay. Then I'm definitely applying. I have no ideas. No, but it's that. I guess, do you have to be a generalist of sort? Like you as managing director have to, somebody comes like, hey, I have a puppy toenail clipping, digital robot thing. You're like, okay. So where does the generalist, kind of aspect help and hinder you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. You definitely have to be a generalist.
By the way, I love that robot toenail clipper for dogs.
Okay, well, I'm
going
sure.
to apply, and that will be the idea that I read about.
Huge impact on the world. What was the question? So generalist versus specialist. Yeah, we try to do both. We try to go as broad as possible, making sure we hit all of the areas of importance, from ideation, team formation, funding, marketing, everything in between. But then you need to go really deep into industry specific areas. So we might have a funding workshop for social impact ventures or for health and science ventures, et cetera. I'm certainly not an expert in all of those industries. So we've hired and created an organizational structure with structure where there are industry verticals. So I have someone that heads up the health and life sciences area, someone that heads up social impact, technology, consumer, et cetera, so that we can really go deep into those areas. And then we also rely on so many amazing experts who come in and contribute their time through office hours, mentoring, instructing workshops, et cetera. So we try to kind of create this complete resource ecosystem for the students.
As much as you plan your if-then scenarios for what types of ideas and businesses may come, like what's been an example of a huge surprise where you're like, oh, we're not prepared for that, but it's a good thought.
Well, yeah, I mean, the coolest thing about my job that I love so much is the diversity of ideas. Every semester we evaluate, 250 ventures. We'll accept maybe 70 or 80 of those, which is still a lot. We'd like to accept them all. And the diversity of ideas is always amazing. And we're pretty evenly distributed between social impact, health and sciences, and consumer and technology, which is amazing. And I think that really speaks to the diversity of the population at Harvard. But what has been unique and different, we always see trends over time. One semester we might have tons of food companies. The next time we might have, on-demand economy companies. This past semester, we had one that I had not seen before. It was a guy who had come up with an idea to predict the weather incredibly accurately using cell phone tower information. So have absolutely no expertise or no advice to give him other than that is the coolest thing I've heard in a long time.
Yeah.
But, interestingly enough, what I can do is find people who do know about that industry and help him partner and find the experts who can support him. So, definitely I'm a generalist, not a specialist.
But I guess that one beats the bug meat idea that came out of the lab. I'm thinking about the idea of these young entrepreneurs. And, most entrepreneurs, I think the average age is like around 35 to 40, somewhere around there,
right.
Which comes after some life experience, and you experience enough things where you go like, okay, that's a real problem. How do you balance sort of the life experience versus business idea and validity of, like career pathing, or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because Harvard used to be famous for a couple, famous dropouts to Harvard that started some pretty interesting companies. But now, the way I think about it is there's no better time to start a company than while you're at school because of the unbelievably tremendous resources. And it's not just Harvard, it's so many schools that are putting so many resources behind it. And it's a super safe place to experiment, practice, oftentimes fail. It's funny because people say, entrepreneurship can't be taught. And I actually think it can. I think, what you don't want to do is take a course on entrepreneurship appreciation, which someone just told me about that term, which I found fascinating because you don't want to learn about entrepreneurship. You actually want to do entrepreneurship, and that's how you get better at it. And I really think practice helps. So again, whether or not we help them become an entrepreneur today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, is irrelevant to us. But we want to get you thinking outside of the box, get you feeling really comfortable with failing often, failing early, on a daily basis, and really pushing people outside of their comfort zone. And I think that is, if we can do that, we can create a lot of value.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I think being able to spot entrepreneurial talent, not just the idea, but like, do you have the je ne sais quoi of what it takes? Because I like to think about this divide between people who are going to be great founders, and then there's going to be like people who are going to be great contributors to a vision. And sometimes those people don't know which side they are. Do you do any filtering with that? And is it consultative in that arena?
Yeah, a little bit. And, it's also the distinction between invention and innovation. We have so many amazingly brilliant researchers who have, spend their lives in labs discovering interesting inventions. But barring any market opportunity, it really won't become a venture, won't become anything. You can't just create an idea that no one wants to buy. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, you have a really interesting idea or technology, but is there really a commercial value to that? And if there is, let's help you find a team to help you execute on that. So again, it could be this, brilliant researcher teaming up with a business school student, a Kennedy student, et cetera. And that to me is the secret sauce, is creating those collaborations that otherwise wouldn't occur. And we have so many people that have met at the iLab in different ways. And, when they talk about their founding stories, they say, this idea would never have been in the world today had we not been coming at it from these differing viewpoints. So a lot of times, what we're trying to do is just create those collisions and collaborations so that the ideas can come to fruition.
Speaking of fruition, favorite success story thus far?
Oh God, no, you can't do that. It's like asking who your favorite kid is. I was in trouble if I do that. I had an
interview this morning, and somebody was like, "What was your favorite interview?" And I was like, "I've done like 140 of these."
Exactly.
I'm going to offend a lot of people.
Yeah.
Or how about a highlight? How about
Again, the diversity of ideas is what's so super cool. So one in the health and science space was a company called Vaxis, which actually came out of a class taught at the iLab, and they were doing a class project on silk-based protein technology. So the original application, I believe, for this technology was to make scarves, very durable scarves, ship them off to developing countries where that's really important. And they're now shipping vaccines to developing countries without refrigeration. So, again, there's that aha moment of, this diverse group of people. It was 4 different Harvard schools identifying an application for technology that was looking for a market. And they're now getting vaccines to countries that otherwise wouldn't get them because they couldn't survive the cold chain. So to me, that's, hugely impactful ideas that wouldn't have happened had these people not met each other. Right. And then, there's this whole idea of the accidental entrepreneur, I call them. So, they come to Harvard, they're amazingly brilliant. Their parents want them to go get a, big corporate job somewhere, use the Harvard name well, and they decide to be an entrepreneur because they have such a personal passion to solve a problem in the world. One that comes to mind is a company called Art Lifting. The founder was a college undergraduate who was deeply involved in combating homelessness. She was also really interested in art. She brought art tools to the homeless shelters, so it would give her an opportunity to interact with them. And she saw how incredibly talented so many of these people were. So she created a company around that to enable the world to see their art, to sell their art, so they're no longer homeless. So incredible impact on the world. She did not come to Harvard to become an entrepreneur, and now she's the founder and head of an incredible company. And then, third one, I'm just kind of trying to hit each industry so I don't play favorites, is a company called Rapid SOS. And this is a company that is reimagining emergency response, basically 911. Personal pain point. His dad, I believe the story is he fell off a ladder, couldn't reach 911, almost died on his cell phone. And so he wanted to find a better way. So now you'll have the ability to reach 911 anytime, anywhere in the world. So those are the types of things, incredible, impactful ideas that are going to change the world.
Those are all great examples. You did a good job of being
didn't
diplomatic.
play favorites. And then, again, we've incubated over 700 ventures in the 5 years we've been here. So, that is just 3 of 700 amazing entrepreneurs.
If I was better at math, I'd do what that was per year. Yeah, I know you bring in a lot of resources and outside, entities and individuals. But from a collaboration standpoint, do you guys work with, other companies or other outside entities in a more official capacity? Because I would imagine like a lot of those ventures are applicable to a Red Cross or to an Uber, like just like how, or a GE where you are birthed.
Yeah. We think about that a lot. Again, how do we make those connections between people who can contribute, help, partner, et cetera. We've experimented, so we try to practice what we preach, and we iterate quite a lot and experiment and prototype. So we had something called the Entrepreneurial Program, where we partnered with 5 different financial services companies to innovate within the context of their corporations solving problems inside their companies. Had a whole bunch of students working on that over the summer, really successful. Some of the ideas are now being implemented. But we don't have a scalable way to do that quite yet. And we're thinking about ways to do that because I think it could be hugely impactful. If you, bringing in a bunch of different sports companies, technology companies, whatever it might be, going across different industry verticals could be, hugely impactful both for the companies as well as the team. So stay tuned. That's something that's on my to-do list for this coming year.
What's a misconception when an outside, like a mentor or somebody, comes to the lab? Because not everybody who's successful went to a Harvard, and so like they walk in the doors and like they're expecting something. I would imagine. Maybe I'm wrong, but is there sort of a misconception, or maybe from the students who enter the program, but just kind of like any sort of misconception where, hey, I thought it was going to be one way, or this surprised me in some way?
Yeah, I mean, it depends who you're asking. So from the outside world, there was a lot, when we were first opening, there was a lot of, what does Harvard know about entrepreneurship? It's very traditional university. How are they going to do this? So, hopefully we've combated all those misconceptions. And then when you're coming to the iLab, I think, interesting for us, even though we've now been open 5 years, a third of the university turns over every year. So we have to go out and evangelize the iLab, who we are, to all 12 schools who have no idea what the iLab is. And I think one of the misconceptions, it really depends on what school you come from. Some people think it's only for tech companies, or other people think it's only for, the business school, or, depending upon where you are, they think it might not be for them. And, the other issue of, I have to come with a well-formed idea or a well-formed team. And the iLab is open to any Harvard student at any stage of development. All you do is swipe your ID and come and go as you please. So we're a pretty welcoming and inclusive place, and we have to constantly be reinforcing that fact around the university.
Have you seen a trend? I think when you have young founders and we start to like reshape the business ecosystem nationally, regionally, internationally, whether it's how business is conducted or just a perspective, like, you sort of mentioned like there's industry trends that pop up like food but then there's these operational things where a company may operate in a way that's sort of disruptive in and of itself because there's a naivete that goes into it. And I don't mean that in the bad way.
Yeah. I think, the trend that I'm seeing, and I think it goes past Harvard, I think it's this generation of innovators, is wanting to have true impact on the world. This whole double bottom line, very focused on doing good and not getting rich quick. And, I always joke that, if you're looking to get rich quick, being an entrepreneur is the absolute worst career choice you can choose because the chance of success is so incredibly low and it's so incredibly hard. But so I think to me, that is, I think, the most interesting trend that they are so impact focused and they really want to do something because they think it has value in the world, not because it's going to make them rich. And then I think the second thing that I think about, and I think we try to reinforce is how important culture is. And so many startups that I've been involved with, and many other people I've seen, are so dysfunctional because they don't think about culture early on in the process. And I think that it's never too early to think about that. And I think if you can build that into, and I think that kind of goes along with the impact focus too. When you have people who are there for the right reasons and similar reasons, and it's instilled in that culture, I think you have a higher chance of success.
You touched on something that I personally believe in, which is innovation is not always synonymous with technology. I think you can innovate a route to school, right? Whatever it is. What is the Harvard definition of innovation?
I don't think we have one. It's funny because the definition of entrepreneurship is at the iLab, which was coined by Howard Stevenson, an HBS professor, I think, a long time ago, around, I'm not going to get this right, but, the constrainment of resources, not having enough resources, and creating companies around that. But as far as innovation goes, the way I think about it is bold new processes, products, and services that have huge value. Again, it's that difference between invention and innovation. Is there a market for it? Is there value in the world for what it is you're trying to create? That to me is true innovation. But maybe that's something we should think about and write on our wall somewhere.
I got something for you. I won't say it right now. There's this. I don't know. I think about your history. I think you studied entrepreneurship yourself, right?
Sort of.
Or you went through an entrepreneurship program at Harvard. You went to Harvard.
I went to Harvard, but it was interesting.
My research team has uncovered some secrets.
Yes. But when I was there, there was just a couple entrepreneurship professors, only a couple entrepreneurship classes. I took all of the ones that were offered, but it's so different now. It's amazingly better. So again, I wish I had a do-over to come back and do it again.
I guess what sort of changed in that span of time? Outside of the growth of the program, but the ecosystem is very different as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when I was graduating, it wasn't cool to be an entrepreneur. It was like a completely unconventional career path, and they didn't know what to do with us. And there were no startups that recruited on campus, and you kind of had to go it alone. There were no support or resources. And now I think it is a valid, almost conventional career path, and you're no longer kind of shunned, or you have to kind of say it in secret that I'm looking for a job at a startup or starting my own company. It's become so much the norm. We have students that show up their first week as an undergrad. They're 18 years old. And, I couldn't even find my dorm room or the cafeteria the first week. And they somehow make their way to the iLab and say, hey, I have some ideas. I really wanted to come to Harvard because of the iLab. And how do I get started? And it's just a completely different generation right now.
You had a pretty good career, you were going along just fine. Why take this role? What is it about it that attracted you?
Yeah, it's funny. As I mentioned, I did about a half a dozen startups over the span of about 15 years. Some were successful, some were colossal failures, everything in between. My last company I co-founded was a mobile app for wine called Drink, which still exists. So if you want to download it in the App Store, please do. Kind of just picked my head up. When you're in a startup, it's blinders on, head down. Your world revolves around getting that company off the ground. And get to that stage of your career where you want to give back, you want to have a broader impact. I wanted to help other entrepreneurs, and was trying to figure out how to do that. And after being an entrepreneur for so many years, at least I was incapable of getting a real job. I interviewed for some real jobs and just could not bring myself to do it. So I was trying to figure out what to do. And serendipity, of course, a friend of mine who worked at Harvard called me one day and said, I just saw a job posting that has your name written all over it. And it was this idea of the Harvard Innovation Lab, which was just a concept at the time.
And I take it you are still friends with that person today.
Absolutely.
Did you give him a percentage?
I give her full credit. I wish there was a percentage to give.
So you're here in LA, which is a long way from Harvard. When you travel, like what's the goal, under your iLab hat?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just general ecosystem development, whether it's meeting with Harvard folks who have graduated, trying to build community and an ecosystem, to collaborating with other innovation contributors, accelerators, incubators, that kind of thing. What I'm thinking about someday as a goal is we have this thing called the Launch Lab, which is our alumni co-working space right across the street from the iLab that we opened 2 years ago because when the students graduated, we had to kick them out because they were no longer students. And, that was a personal pain point for me because that's when they really needed us the most. So we opened up the Launch Lab. It's been amazingly successful, again, in this cross-disciplinary way, bringing together like-minded entrepreneurs, similar stages of development, collaborating with each other, learning from each other in this amazing community. So, my goal someday is to have launch labs in other geographies around the globe. So, we could have a launch lab in LA someday, and then I'd get to come visit you more often.
Come by anytime, especially when you get my application. No, so I'm looking at all these different programs you guys have: networking, financial modeling, customer development.
You've done your homework.
Data. I told you we have a big research team. That guy's great, by the way. Our researcher, he's amazing. He looks just like me. But what about soft skills? Like, what about grit or your EQ and meditation or whatever it takes?
I'm so glad you brought that up, and that's sort of a light bulb went off for us a couple years into the program that the content that we deliver, the knowledge transfer around skill building is really important. And we've developed this, pretty robust content library. You can go online to our YouTube channel and watch all these videos, and there's some amazing people delivering amazing content. But the one thing that we realized is we call it human factors. It's all those soft skills that are often not taught and overlooked. And, that goes to things like building culture, et cetera. And we've made an enormous focus and concentration on adding more content and more workshops and more programs in that area because it is so important. And, one thing that we found over time too is that, we do big events, we do medium-sized events, little events, and the ones where you're interacting on a small scale with other people that are doing what you're doing and really getting behind the curtain of, how hard this is where the most impact is had. And, we do NPS for everything we do, and that always has the highest scores.
Right.
So students often don't realize how important that is. So we're working really hard to hit home how important that is and working it into the program. One thing I haven't talked about yet is our venture incubation program. So, there's about 80% of our resources. You don't have to be part of any program. And then if you have a well-formed team, a well-formed idea, and you are really looking to commit yourself and commercialize, you apply to this venture incubation program, and that unlocks more resources. So you will, stage appropriate resources like these human factors, like industry roundtables, founders dinners, things like that, that can really help you with those soft skills.
This all seems really well thought out. Like you have a lot of angles covered. What's on the wish list? You're like, okay, here's where we need to step our game up a little bit.
Yeah. So many things. My to-do list, my wish list, and strategic plan is very long, and hopefully we'll get to it all someday. Part of it is being opportunistic and listening to the market, as I try to tell our teams, responding to their needs. But a big thing for me that I think will enable us to scale and extend our reach is technology. Having a technology platform that helps build and reinforce community, having a technology platform that allows us to distribute our content better, a technology platform to allow alumni to collaborate. If I can't build launch labs in a physical space, can I build virtual launch labs? There's so much that I think that we can do and really scale this thing if we can use technology appropriately. Right now we're constrained by the number of events we can do a year, the number of people that come through the iLab. We can only help you if you're here. And so what we'd like to do is take that off the table so that we can help a lot more people. And along those lines, this whole idea, we call it top of funnel, this misconception that you have to have an idea and a team to come to the iLab. We want to have a lot more events that bring you there earlier in the process. So if we can help you earlier in the process, again, we hope we can increase your chances of success.
Yeah, I would imagine like an entrepreneurial discovery, like discovering who you are as an entrepreneur is also just like self-discovery. And I think the age is right in terms of being, at a college age. But have you kind of mirrored the sort of business journey and the personal like growth? Or have you seen that as a mirror?
Yeah, absolutely. And, there are people, we do these things called the challenges, which is part of this category of experiential learning. We talked earlier about practicing entrepreneurship, and I think that's really important. So it allows you to kind of, pick a problem in the world to be solved, form a team, iterate on that idea, get lots of feedback, et cetera, through the process. And, we get, hundreds of people that participate in this, and not all of them come out the other side as entrepreneurs, but they learn a lot about themselves, how they can be innovators. Again, if you go get a job at a large corporation, we want you to be an out-of-the-box thinker and an innovator there too. So, tremendous value to be had even for those that don't want to pursue entrepreneurship.
So the show is called Innovation Crush, as I believe you know. What have you seen out in the world, whether it's in the iLab, in your travels, or just something you've seen on TV? You're like, oh, that's really amazing, but that you may have an innovation crush on?
Yeah. Again, right now, I think I mentioned it early on, is virtual and augmented reality. I really am excited about that. We just did a big event last week. We had about 1,200 people come through the iLab to learn about it. So there's no shortage of interest. We've seen a lot of companies formed at the iLab around AR, VR. And the thing that I think is super cool about it is that it cuts across so many different industry verticals and can impact so many different areas of the world, from, how you teach surgery to, med students to, how you story tell or, train athletes to be better performers, and everything in between. That, I think there's just so many use cases and opportunities for impact beyond Pokemon, beyond gaming that we've seen so far. And I think it's really starting to happen. I think we've been talking about this for years, but because all the hardware is finally in market and finally affordable, and people can start iterating on their ideas. And as a result, we are building out an AR/VR lab at the iLab. Oh, wow. So it's going to have equipment and processors and cameras, and give the students the ability to ideate in this new with this new platform. So I'm super excited to see what's going to come of that.
That's cool. Your eyes just lit up, which is pretty cool. What is your superpower, right? You're leading a team, you're leading students, you're kind of like at the apex of this whole, like, upside down triangle, or right side up, whatever way. But like, what's the one thing that Jodi is amazing at? When people,
I hate talking about myself, and I'd rather talk about all the super cool ventures. I think
you're here because of you, not because of your work.
I have no superpower. If I did, it would be to fly. I love flying. But I think it is that ability to connect, and being able to help entrepreneurs. I have such a great job because my only goal in life is to help other entrepreneurs and innovators succeed. And I get to help hundreds, if not thousands of them. So, by creating the opportunity for them to connect either with each other or the contributors to their industry or their venture, hopefully we can set them on the right path.
Awesome. Last but not least, you ready?
Okay.
Deep breath. That was me breathing, guys, not Jodi.
I've been told I don't breathe enough.
A guy told me is like we all breathe too shallow.
Yes. Someone told me I don't know how to breathe, and I thought
it's weird, right?
Yeah, involuntary.
But I ended up like in a half-hour conversation. I was like, "What? Oh, okay." But it's like all the benefits of breathing. It was pretty. And that we breathe wrong is weird. Innovation to me is.
Oh, gosh. I think you kind of sort of tried to ask that earlier. I think it is the courage and the boldness to put forth ideas that are going to have an enormous impact on the world.
Courage. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's actually a first, I think.
Yeah.
You know, there is a fearlessness that goes along. No, that's serious.
Be bold.
Be bold. Where can people go to find more about you? Well, not you. You don't want to talk about you.
Yeah, exactly.
About the iLab, which I love the logo. It just says, hi.
Isn't it the best logo?
That's so cool.
It's so friendly and so, it's interesting. I have to tell a stupid short story. Sorry. I know, probably over time.
This is what you're here for.
So when we first opened, we put a big sign on the door, and we're in this kind of, on the outskirts of campus at Harvard, and someone called us, said they were driving by on Western Ave, and their kid in the back seat all of a sudden yelled, "Hi." And the mom was like, "Who are you saying hi to?" And she said, "That building. It said hi to me." And to me, that is exactly what we want to be. We want to be inclusive and friendly and open to anyone. So I don't know. Love the logo.
Buildings that can talk to children. That's an innovation in and of itself.
There you go.
They can see ghosts and they can talk to buildings. It's anyway. Now I digress. So where can people find out more about the iLab? Where do they go online?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, I'd rather you check out all the amazing ventures that are there. So i-lab at harvard.edu is probably the best place.
They're all listed like alphabetically and by year, correctly?
Yeah, and you can sort by industry and school and all sorts of things. Lots of filtering.
Well thought out. Everyone, this has been another installment of Innovation Crush. Thank you for coming.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
And we will talk to you next time.